Hello everyone, so as promised on my Instagram feed last weekend and possibly on the video I put on YouTube last Sunday night I think it was, I've got the Strut of the Modus in front of me. I'm now going to demonstrate in better detail how you disassemble the strut, obviously compressing the spring down, undo the top hat, put it all back together again afterwards. So I'm going to change the camera angle, explain the first little bit and then we'll go from there. This is the bottom end of our strut. Two bolts go through the wheel hub at the very bottom and basically will clamp it all together. You've then got the bolt there that holds the little bracket that just supports a couple of wires and tubes. The other side of this little bracket on that side is where the anti-roll bar drop link goes. And then if we go up a bit higher, we've got the spring, obviously. This locates just here. It has this little sleeve around the bottom of the spring. Not too sure what on earth it's actually there for, because my own cars haven't got one of those, but I put it back on because it came off the old one, so just a typical thing you normally do. Dust cover here just to stop dirt getting onto the central piston that goes in and out. Obviously you don't want grit getting inside it, ideally. And then at the very top here, we've got the spring top here, and then what we've got in the centre here, where my finger is now running, that is basically your top mount bearing. What that enables is when the car turns, obviously the top bit here doesn't turn, that's bolted to the body, so this bit here basically enables the bottom half to turn independently to the top half. So yeah, and then above the bearing you've then got this like basically rubber bush which is moulded around this top metal plate which then bolts to the car. Now the issue we had last weekend was when I got the new top mount, if I try and turn this camera this way around for you, so the two holes here are the same, but side to side this back hole here are in different places. The right hand one which we had last weekend in the brand new packet was this bolt hole was over here, and then also this moulded rubber here is also opposite way round as well. So consequently the one we got last weekend was absolutely no good to fit this side of the car. However, what I've done is, as you can see, this top mount here is absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. The mount itself is fine. It is just purely the fact this bearing at the top here is rough as hell. So I lubricated it up last weekend just to help it along for us for the next few days. And during the week I actually went on eBay. I managed to find one that was just the bearing itself, not the top hat with it, so I managed to get a fair bit cheaper as well. Turns out it also is the same one that fits on Renault Kangoo, Renault Clio Mark III, a couple of others, I can't remember them now, but I found a nice new bearing, and basically I'm just going to take going to compress the spring back down like we did last weekend to fit it. Release this top nut, take the top hat and the bearing back off, new bearing on, top hat back on, reassemble it. So hopefully I can show as much as I can on video to do basically what I'm trying to do here, which is obviously as usual demonstrate how you can do things at home. So let's go and get the spring compressors and crack on. I've got my spring compressors now. I've actually got two sets of these. One set is literally just a really old style sort of one hook top, one hook bottom, and you just sort of wind it up and obviously it just squeezes the spring up. I've got these newer ones as well which have got two hooks. I've chosen to use them whenever I can purely because it means you've got they've got a more defined U shape to them, so there's more of a hook, whereas the metal ones I've got are sort of more, they've not quite got the same definition of a U bend on it, so I'm always terrified they're going to slip off, and I have on one occasion, so I like to use these ones wherever I can. The bonus here is, because this spring is already compressed on the absorber itself, we haven't got to compress it half as much as I had to last weekend. It's more or less just a case of squeeze it up until the top hat releases, and then as soon as that releases we can get this top off, put the new one on, bosh bosh, put it back together again. Whereas last weekend it started off about probably this high, you had to squash it right down to be able to get it on there. So yeah, basically the general gist of using these is you want them to be as basically 180 degree to each other across it as you can. Sometimes you can't quite do it, so you sort of end up at this funny angle where there's sort of one there, so it's almost sort of you're not quite half and half, you're more sort of a third of the way round. But you basically want it to be you want as many coils in it as you can get, because obviously otherwise the amount of distance there dramatically drops and then you don't get as much compressing duration as you could do if it was more spread out. But yeah, basically you want as far apart as you can in terms of round the spring and as many coils apart as you can get. So yeah, on this occasion I say just going to wind it up, tension it down so it releases the top. Once it does that, we can undo the top half, take this all apart, and here we have a brand new bearing. So you'll notice the difference now between how much these are compressed than they were before. It's now loose enough that the bottom of the spring will move. So I'm now going to start releasing this off here, because if that can move at this bottom end here, it means that you've taken away, I think, enough compression to be able to safely remove that. There is one of two ways you can do this next stage. Either you can get an impact gun with a socket and you can just windy it straight off, that will work, or you can do it a slightly old fashioned way like this. Use the hex key drive in the very top of the strut, and then you can put a span around it, and then basically you put this the hex key on tighten up, and that then enables you to act against it and undo this one here. So that's why I'm going to do it, because my impact driver last weekend, the adapter that takes it from a screwdriver to a socket, sheared in two pieces. So do it the old fashioned way. Never mind. And there we have it. The top nut itself is undone. We now just pull that out. Now the one risk you do have of doing it this way is the fact that obviously that there can quite easily just round itself out, and it does very often do that. So an impact gun can be the safer option, but if you haven't got that option, then this does work. But obviously if the strut's been on there a long time, say, and there's a little bit of rust on there, or say been on there so long the two are just rusted together, you can end up either breaking the hex key you use or just simply round that out. So never mind, it's worked okay for us, because obviously it's a brand new strut, so we've not got the problem. So it all just comes off quite nice and easily. Now we literally just lift our top hat off, and as I say, this bottom here is in perfect condition, so there's no need to change that at all. And here is our worn bearing. It's got to now try and pull it off of the spring, because the spring locates on it, so it's all seated together. So I might need to turn the camera off a minute to get a bit more leverage on this. Here are the old one and the new one. Now strangely enough, the new one actually doesn't sound any better than the old one does, which makes me think that maybe it's just the way they're supposed to sound. But if we compare the amount of rock and play you've got with this bit here that goes against the top mount, that bit's loose and all over the place. This one here is nice and tight. But the bit that really makes me laugh here is these are both plastic, whereas if we compare it to this one that was a new one for my Mark II 5, it's metal. So yeah, it's quite intriguing that they now use plastic for those, but never mind. Nonetheless, we've got a nice new one, and we're going to put that one on. This is where I made the small mistake last weekend. So basically, where I'd taken it all off, I landed it on top like that, which then meant that this area here was just going to be digging into the bush the whole time. But actually, what I then came to find when I was trying to fit it together was, well, what the hell was there to locate the spring on? And eventually, after some lots of swearing and looking around for something that I'm certain was missing, flip it over. It sits beautifully on that rubber mounting like so, and then the spring itself locates here. So I hadn't lost anything actually. It was just purely the fact that tired, rushing around, and it was easy to miss something. So with all that all put back together like so, we've now literally just got to pop it on here like so. Make sure our spring is located properly around that top locator like so. And then if we get our nut, which is just here, now a new mount would come with a brand new nut, but in all honesty with you, once you've wound that down, you've released that spring, that ain't moving. So I'm just going to stick it straight back on as it is. It'll be absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned. If it was my own car, I would do the exact same thing, so therefore I'm going with my gut instinct. To do this back up again, we literally just do the opposite of how we undid it. Now, as I was telling you earlier on, if you want to undo that nut, then obviously this centre bit needs to be going the opposite way as in the tighten direction. So we had it like so. Now to tighten that back up again, we'll put the ratchet, which will be the centrepiece, in the opposite direction to loosen it off, which will then mean we can then tighten this up in that direction with that holding on to it for us. And what I'll do is I'll show you when I get to the end when I want to nip it right off and how I do it. this last bit. So what we're going to do is you put, this is how I do it at least, put that in like that, and then what you do is you literally just pull the two together like so. And what you're therefore doing is you're just holding one at the same time as pulling the other against it. This is exactly the same technique as I use when I'm at work and I'm putting diesel fuel lines together, because you have the end of the rubber pipe, and then you have the fitting that goes on the end of it on the metal fitting that's crimped to it, and basically I hold one side and then I pull the other against it. So obviously if you wanted to go the other way, you would go like that to undo it, and then you'd lock the ratchet in the opposite direction. To do it up, as I'm doing now, you literally just put it in like that, and then you pull the two together, because therefore you're pulling the ratchet in the unloosened position, which obviously tightens it against the nut, and then you're also pulling the nut in the tightened direction down along the bolt. So yeah, right, I'll just tighten that up properly off camera because I can use both hands. Next step is now to release our spring compressors and settle the whole lot back down exactly as it was before. Top nut is all done up. I've got it clamped to the vice here, as you may well have guessed. So I release the clamps, and then basically the whole spring is just going to extend itself top ways, bottom ways, and it will then be a spring that is compressed within the boundaries of the shock absorber from here to the top mount. Here we have it, one fully rebuilt strut with a new bearing, new spring, new shock absorber. Glorious. Right, let's get back on the car. Now, something I'm finding easy today, folks, is the fact that because this bearing is actually new, it's not half worn out, trying to turn this top hat to actually make up the to marry the holes in the mounting with the holes in the bodywork, this time it's actually a hell of a lot easier. It's actually just nicely, easily turning. So I think the fact that the other one was almost, it was very, very tough to turn, I think it just goes to show that although this one sounds very much the same, that extra play that I've shown you, I think was the difference between this one and that one. This one is definitely better than that one was.